You have relationships, but I bet they're not profitable relationships, or they're probably not as profitable as they could be. I have the man to help you fix all of that, Mr. Dove Gordon. Dove, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. I never thought of myself as a relationship coach.
Well, you're not a relationship coach, but let's actually talk about your professional journey and then what brought you to the work that you're doing today. We'll dig into that here in a moment, but give us the backstory. How did your entrepreneurial journey start, and what were some interesting pit stops along the way?
Well, let's see. Back in early 2000s, I was married about a year or so, very early 20s, needed to figure out what I was going to do. And I'd heard about this thing called business coaching, joined Corporate Coach University. I don't think they might still be around, don't know. Or you're nodding. You remember there?
Oh, sure, totally.
It was very big.
It was a big deal back then.
Yeah, I don't know if it still exists, but never bothered getting the certification at the end because I knew that really wouldn't make a big difference, which is an interesting point because so many coaches who go to get certification, they really don't understand how little certification actually matters in probably 98% of the cases. So, and there's a whole lot of other nonsense that's taught as part of coach certification. So we can go down that that path if it comes back up. Did that for a while. I really didn't know what I was doing, except I knew they had a sense that I had something to add, something to offer, some value. And over the next 10 years, I did some consulting. I formed several CEO peer groups, starting with small businesses and then eventually moving my group to where we had CEOs of companies with between 10 and $150 million in sales, getting together 10 times a year for half a day, learn from each other. I did get some clients from that, some consulting clients. But overall, I because I really didn't know what I was doing and I was just learning along the way, which I guess we all learn along the way, but I really didn't know what I was doing. It's not like I had a job before and I knew how businesses work. I just, I was learning and I picked up certain abilities that certain clients found valuable. But it was like the first 7 or so years was a real like pushing boulders up the hill, watching them roll back, like, Sisyphus, just. Whoo.
Oh, yes.
And then, after that, I towards the end of that, I started to figure some things out. I started to realize that I did have some value to offer people who were perhaps a few years behind me in the journey. And I seemed to have a knack for suffering through certain things and then distilling down the essence and sharing it with others. Not that I could save them from all suffering, because nobody can, right? It's just part of the journey. But we all like to make things a little bit easier for those who come behind us. And I decided I was going to shift my focus to online and serving consultants, coaches, experts, and so on around the world. That shift happened, and then I formed what. Well, my next question was, well, how am I going to reach these people, right? How am I going to reach them? And I'm from New York. I live in Israel, and I'm not going to travel around all the time. I, young family at the time, and I was didn't want to travel that much. And I also, Google Ads was new, relatively new. Facebook ads, I don't think even existed yet, although Facebook was starting to come in on the scene. I don't remember what year everything happened. And I decided I was going to form a community of other people who were interested in doing, building their own audiences, and were happy to promote, others to their email list, joint ventures using direct marketing methods. So I reached out to a handful of people I'd met online in various forums and programs I'd been in, and we got our first 5 people. Over the next years, we grew that to about 200, just under 200 members. I ran it for about 8 years without charging anything. And that's, grew really fast. And I got to the point where I realized that it's just, I need to know who really wants to be here, because we had about 195, 200 members. And I'd say
this specifically, just so folks know, this specifically is your joint venture mastermind group affectionately known as JVMM,
Correct.
that started out as this free sort of collaboration, joint
Yeah.
venture incubator, if you will.
Exactly.
And even before we get to the switch over to the paid, you've attracted over the years some amazing rock star online marketers. I mean, if people follow online marketing, these would be names that you totally recognize. How did you attract those folks in those early first 3, 4, 5 years?
It's my hair, David.
Hair?
My hair. They're
Me
attracted to my
too.
hair. Yeah.
Me too.
You and I both. Well, okay. If it wasn't the hair, then honestly, we do have quite a number of members who, in the early days, I would, I'd see their work and imagine like, why would they ever want to talk to me? But over time, what happened is that, you grow, right? So I started off with people who are more or less at my level, and then we're growing together. And, and then they bring in another person, and then almost every new member was nominated by an existing member. And people know people who know people. And it turned out that we were doing something worthwhile, something unique. There was something different apparently in the community that I was building that people valued. And, and when I'm happy to talk about that too, if we want to go down that path. And so that just brought people in. I mean, that's the answer. It's just that I think that a lot of times people aim too high, and then what happens is that then like you're trying to get the attention of people that you put on a pedestal, and they, when you're approaching them, they don't necessarily see what value you can have for them. It's not even necessarily a stuck up thing. It could just be they don't relate to you yet. But if you focus on working with people who are a little ahead of you, a little behind you at your stage, and then you're growing together, you get to a point where somebody in your group is kind of reaching that level, or becomes the point where they're just a little bit ahead, a little behind, or at that level with some of the big names, so to speak, and brings them into your fold, brings them into your circle. So I really just recommend is start where you are. Focus on who you can bring value to today. And if you are one of those individuals, and there are some who, you can go from 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds, more power to you. I don't want to hold you back. But it's not the way most people need to work. Most people need to get started, follow a certain path, grow as a person along the way. And then over time, you become the person who the people you respect and admire see as, oh, you're one of us.
Yeah, for sure. Now, for folks that are listening and that might not be familiar with the lingo, early days of internet marketing, if they don't know what joint ventures are, early days of internet marketing, we had this concept of affiliate marketing. And there were these affiliate marketplaces that had tens of thousands of people. And the mythology around that was just put yourself in this affiliate marketplace, and hundreds of these online marketers will grab your link, sign up to be your affiliate, and start selling your stuff for you. So a joint venture, my understanding is all affiliate relationships are joint ventures, but not all joint ventures are necessarily that kind of mass marketing affiliate relationship. So break down for us, what's your definition of a joint venture? And as you were building JVMM, what did you have in mind for the folks that you were inviting in and the folks that you were not inviting in?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, the way I see it is, affiliates often don't necessarily have their own products or services, whereas joint venture partners generally do. And we were not a community for affiliates. We were a community for joint venture partners. So affiliates, they're people who, one way or another, they know how to get traffic. They know how to bring eyeballs. But therefore, they're always looking for something good to sell to those people, to those eyeballs. People that I was working with and still do work with, people like you and me, we all would much rather sell as much of our own stuff as we can. However, we all recognize that there are always going to be way more people on my email list, way more people in my audience, way more people following me on social media who will never buy from me than those who will. And they'll never buy from me, but they're there for a reason. They're probably looking for somebody. and they might be looking for you. They might be looking for, Bob. So we're doing, it's a win-win-win. Everybody wins if I send out an email letting them know about your webinar or your, report or PDF or whatever it might be. Why? Because a lot of them are there, and we've done this, you and I know some people have come to work with you, and that's great. So, they're on my list. They don't know that you exist, or maybe they even do. Maybe they heard of you, but they didn't know, weren't really paying close attention. So I kind of shine the spotlight on what you're doing and what, and what you're all about. And they take a closer look as a result, and they may start to work with you. And these are people who may never have worked with me anyway. So they're better served. And then vice versa. You could do the same and send people to me. And we've done that as well. And now when you bring, 100, 150, 190, 200, 250 people together who are all marketing and selling more or less to the same types of audiences, we're mostly all competitors in some way, but that's only when you look at it, from one perspective. Or from another perspective, we're not competing, because like I just said, there's the pie out there is big, and we can expand the pie together. There'll always be more people in my audience who will never buy from me. There'll be those who will instead buy from you, and there'll be some who buy from both of us. So, that's the idea of a joint venture as opposed to an affiliate. Affiliates are looking for something to sell to their audience, to the audience, the traffic they can bring. We really just want to grow our audiences so we can sell more of our own stuff. But if people aren't going to buy from me, they might be interested in you.
Totally. So I'm going to get personal for a moment.
Okay.
Do you happen to remember a gentleman by the name of Jeff Martin?
Somewhat.
Okay.
Not so clearly.
So Jeff and I have a conversation. This is just perfectly illustrating your point.
Dentist guy?
No, marketing guy, actually. Marketing kind of agency guy.
Yeah, you really put me on a spot.
I know. Well,
I hope he doesn't
Jeff's
listen to
not going to
this.
be offended, and I'm not even sure Jeff listens to the show.
Yeah, all right.
But here's what he says to me. He says, David, I've been in the marketing world for a while, online, etc. You are one of only 3 people that I follow closely. And he says, the other 2 are Dove Gordon and Donald Miller. And I was like, wow, okay. So again, this was probably some level of cross-pollination, right? He came from you, or he came into your world from me. And that's the kind of thing where it's like, first of all, you and me being put on the same level as Donald Miller, that's pretty cool. Even me being put on the same level as you, that's pretty cool. It's cool for Donald Miller too. Exactly. Touche, my friend. But that's the kind of thing where it's like, I've heard of you, your name is in circulation. So we are in their orbit, or they are in our orbit. And I love what you said about not everyone on your list is going to buy from you. But if you can be the pointer out of cool people and other experts, and that's one of my definitions of an expert, is someone who points out other experts. So back in the day, I'm going to date myself here, Tom Peters would do this all the time. Tom had a specific little section of his newsletter called Tom's Cool Friends. And it was other consultants and other authors and other business thought leaders. And I was like, why is he promoting those people? It's like, oh, because it's good for them, it's good for him, and it's good for their shared audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, over the years, I've come across consultants, largely people who are targeting the corporate world. And they don't understand this. They're very protective of their audiences. They're very protective of their contacts, their connections. It would be a surprise to their audiences and the contacts to find out that they're actually owned and controlled by somebody. It would really be a surprise. And they don't understand how valuable it is for everybody. It's win-win-win. Jay Abraham called this triangulation. It's like there's three parties and everybody wins. They don't understand this, unfortunately. So they're very protective. They will never consider introducing their audience to somebody who does anything similar to them. But people in the direct marketing world, it's a different way of thinking. And I think it's likely far more lucrative because people recognize that, hey, I can't control what these people do anyway. I'm not going to, but so if I introduce them to you after they've been hearing me for a while, and and they haven't raised their hand to work with me or to buy something from me, I might as well introduce them to you. And if they decide to work with you, then that's fantastic, and depending on what we may have in place or not, like sometimes people have commissions they'll pass back and forth, sometimes not, sometimes, there's a lot of different ways to be valuable to each other, but the core is bringing good people together. And I found that, over the years, I think of myself as a collector of good people, so I collect good people and I curate them into JVMM. Part of my job is to really to make sure that, overwhelmingly it's the people who belong there. Every now and then someone slips through, but and then, I think of my job as curation, conversation, education, and then I make it easy for them to get to know each other, conversation. And then there's always so much to learn, but we also have amazing, knowledgeable experts, people who know and have accomplished some remarkable things. So when I become aware of what something a member has that I think would be of interest to everybody, I just give them a platform within the community to share that. So curation, conversation, education, those are my three roles in JVMM. Other than that, I take a very light touch to leading the JVMM, very light touch. I don't try to control things. I don't try, I've had people offer me, hey, something like, hey, Dove, if you introduce me to other people and they promote me, I'll give you a commission on what they promote. And I say, look, if I promote you and I generate business for you, I don't mind taking a commission, but I introduce people all the time and I'm not going to, if I do, and it generates business, I'm just happy for you. I don't need to control. Like, I don't try. I think that, people say, don't leave money on the table. We all leave money on the table. It's nonsense to not leave money on the table. The question is, how much money are you going to leave on the table? Which money are you going to leave on the table? The money that you don't leave on the table, what's the price you're paying for that? And I think that a lot of communities I've seen over the years, people try to be too controlling, and when you're trying to be too controlling with adults and you got all these long lists of rules, you're really just setting yourself up for, too much frustration, in my opinion.
Yes.
So my approach is a modest annual fee. I focus on doing what the things I laid out and just leading things and moving things forward. But not trying to control. I just want to support. I want to facilitate. I want to enable. And then when you do that, when you bring good people together and you enable them to get to know each other, great things come from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I realize I interrupted your narrative and I'd love to keep going. So 7 or 8 years, no charge. Then you decide, okay, we have about 195 people. It's time to get serious. Pick up the story from there.
Well, I realized that probably about half of the people were active. The other half were not active. I never counted. And active in, in terms of like they would be participating in our email-based conversations. We use Google Groups. They would be on our calls sometimes. I would hear from them. I knew that they were talking with others or doing things. And the others I just wouldn't hear from, So I realized that I just didn't want this. It wasn't healthy for a community to be like that, where you have, at least not this kind of community, where you have so many people who weren't really participating. It's frustrating because, a new member joins, they go to the member directory and reach out to some people who don't respond. That's not something that, we're not looking for that. I think that good communication with other potential partners or other members is really important. So I decided I had to make a shift, and I was scared. I was scared of losing all these great relationships. I was scared of going from 200 members down to 10, maybe 20. But you get to the point with certain things where you realize that, hey, either I take a leap, I've got to take that leap, or, I'll start over, right? And it's either do it or walk. And it took me a while. I was really nervous, but I had some conversations with some key members behind the scenes, and they said, sure, for sure, you should do it. And they encouraged me to charge even more than I was planning to, which I didn't. And finally we did. It was about 3 years ago. I said, hey, this is how it's going to be, and here's why. I'm hoping you'll continue. And fortunately, we did not end up with my worst case scenario, but we ended up with, I think it was 45 members at the time who said yes. We continued with those 45. And then over the following, 6 months, the nominations were very, very slow, which, I was getting a lot of nominations before that. But after about the first 6 months, it started to pick up again. And then over the next couple of years, 2 to 3 years, we grew 45 to 70, 90, 100, 120. And as we're growing, I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if I could somehow make this my main thing. It was never my intention for it to be a source of revenue. Certainly never my intention for it to be my main business. But I was wondering, like, could I make this work? And that was the next scary decision that I made. End of 2022, or so, end of 2021, beginning of 2022, where I decided that I was going to make this my main thing. At the time I made that decision, I couldn't see how it would generate all the revenue that I needed. But I just got to thinking that, if I could focus fully on doing one thing really well with such an amazing group of people, I'm sure that I could find ways of being more value to some of them, being more valuable to some of the members, which would make them happy to pay a little more for some things. And that would get me to where I need to be, so that I can just, focus on the community. And that's what happened. I mean, we're still in the middle of the journey, but early, at the end of March 2022, I closed down my last group coaching program. And I said, look, I got to shift my focus. I still work with people one-on-one when they show up, and it's a good fit. Often I find myself coaching people in that capacity around developing a simple, compelling, head-turning message for some aspect of what they're doing, whether it's the core business or some piece of it, and then laying out how they're going to use that in their marketing and sales, and the sales conversation, how to elegantly lead your next sales conversation. Those are the two areas that I still will coach and consult to when it's a good fit. For the most part, though, just focused on JVMM, getting to spend a lot of time on calls, getting to know members, make introductions amongst them, improving our systems, creating some training for members. Now we've added two coaching groups within the network for members. So there's it's called Simplicity 6 and Simplicity 7. Simplicity 7 is for our members in the 7-figure range. And so who want to go deeper, who want a place where they can just speak out loud some questions or issues that they're facing, and charge a little bit more for that. It's a fraction of what people are paying some of these other high-priced masterminds for 7-figure business owners. I do that intentionally because I'm not looking to grow a big business. I don't want to grow a big team. I've got me and 1.5 people supporting me, and I just want to I'm more of an artist. I've come to understand over the years. I'm more of an artist rather than a manager. Don't enjoy the management. I like having I don't like coming in and feeling like I have all these people who are waiting for me to make sure that they have what to do, or whatever. And I'm sure some people will say, "Oh, you're not managing right." Yeah, that's true, but it's because I don't want to. So anyway, yeah, I enjoy the art part of it, which is the relationship part, getting to know people and kind of making magic happen, just by focusing. And fortunately, we've continued to grow. I aim to put a cap, I'm not gonna take more than 250 members or so, probably. And we still have a ways to go, but we're getting close. We're almost back to that, back to 200 as we were. And that's that. I mean, we just get some great people. We learn so much from everybody. So that's my journey.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Is it okay if I brag on JVMM for a moment?
You can brag whatever you want.
Okay. So when I first joined, I was like slow kid. I was a slow kid on the bus, and this was back when it was free. So this was I did 3 years. The journey that you just mapped out, 3 years before it switched to paid, maybe even 4 years. One of my very first conversations was with John Corcoran. And, I think this was even a directive from you: connect with members, find out how they are leveraging the JVMM experience, and, kind of get marinated in what's going on. What John Corcoran told me in that very first conversation, this was, remember, back when it was free. He says, David, the way to think about JVMM is pretend you just paid $25,000 to be here, and act accordingly. Take advantage of all the meetings, get to know the people, This is an amazing peer group. The fact that it's free, you know, we're not sure what's wrong with Dove, but that's not my problem. Pretend you paid $25,000 to be here.
Mhm.
And when he and I had that conversation, I was like, you know, he's right. He's right. I was still the slow kid on the bus, but then I started reaching out to people. Then I started attending some of the amazing monthly sessions that you have. And even now that it's paid, I want to just echo your words. It is a fraction, like a teeny tiny fraction of the value that you will get. So talk about what are the components of the JVMM experience. I know you have the monthly trainings. I know there's the amazing, very active, profit-rich gold mine every single day in the Google group that we get via email. You can also go to the website, but talk about the various building blocks of the JVMM value prop.
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, it's important to know who it's for and who it's not for. And it's important to know that I never try to convince anyone to join, and I never try to convince anyone to stay. And I think that's an important part. It's like, and I do every now and then get a request from someone, can I try it for a month? Or, and my answer is no. Not because I'm being unreasonable or, unreasonably difficult, but because, my feeling and my experience is that if somebody feels drawn to what we're doing after, like, I've got a couple of videos up on profitablерelationships.com. That was the reference at the very beginning, relationship coaching. So profitablerelationships.com, got a couple of videos there. Usually the right people who watch that, they're like, okay, I've been looking for this. I want to join. And then we talk and I get to know them because I want to be sure it's a good fit. I've turned away somebody who I estimate was worth $100 million because he didn't get it. It wasn't for him. And I don't chase celebrities. I don't chase, we have some people who qualify as celebrity in their space, but they're not there for this because of the celebrity. They're because they also have other qualities. People, and the reason is because just, someone could be super successful, but not necessarily generous, and one of the things that makes the group really work is because we collect people who are doers and also givers, people who are happy to share what they're doing and what's working and what's not working and ask for help and to help and support each other in a whole variety of ways. So that's one part of what I look for. The other thing I'm looking for is, of course, just more of the, the qualifications on paper. Like, we're looking for people between low 6 and upper 7 figures, although we have a few 8 figures as well, who market and sell to, to small business, consultant, coach, agency owner, entrepreneur, and so on, online using direct marketing methods, which include joint ventures. They're much more likely to have a funnel rather than an email newsletter. And the people who I'm talking to know exactly what I'm talking about, right? And they are using direct marketing methods of one kind or another. They may have events as well, virtual or in person. So those are the people who are a good fit. Now, what we do is we have 5 main ways that we interact. Number one is we have a pretty active email-based conversation, like you shared or mentioned. It's a Google group, and that goes, 24/7. You can ask and get really rapid answers, quality answers on just about anything: technical, tactical, strategic, resources, introductions. It's just it's remarkable. Well, twice a month. We used to do this as one call. Now we split it. Instead of a 2-hour call, we now have we have one call, which is a brain trust call. That's where I give somebody who I know has something valuable to share with everybody some time. We also can have some time if people want to ask questions, but it's usually been someone sharing something that everyone can benefit from and learn from. We just had an email that went out yesterday from one of our longest time members who, when he started, he was doing $250,000 a year in sales. He's now over $10 million in sales. And no, that's not typical. And no, I don't take any credit for it. Although he gives JVM some credit, but obviously, he knows how to do things. He knows how to use it, and he had a vision for what he wanted. He also has over 100 employees now, which doesn't appeal to me in the least. But an interesting, like, he has not been on a live call in a few years, but that's because he has a standing conflict. However, he also has not missed listening to a recording in several years. And I know that because every few months I'll just drop his name on a live call. And then a few days later, he emails me thanking me for the shout out. Yesterday, he sent an email to everybody saying, thank you to Debbie Allen, who gave this fantastic little presentation. And for he helped him book, I think it was $54,000 in sales over a few days. He had listened to her, what she shared a couple of weeks ago, and then he immediately acted on it and listening to her ideas. And he brought in, over $50,000 in a few days, because that's how he rolls. That's how it works. Now I talked about a couple of things. I'll just point it out. Number one, I don't control. Like, I don't want any member to feel, now I'm in JVM, now I have a whole other long list of obligations. I don't want that. That's part of what I say is like light touch. I don't try to control anything. We do track who's on calls and who's not. And if somebody's, if someone hasn't been on a call a long time, I might ask them about it. Hey, what's going on? How can we help you? But, I don't want to, my experience is that people who participate because they see that I will be served by participating, I will benefit their own self-interest. They're the ones who their participation is valuable to everybody. If they're asking a question, it's a question that everybody's going to be valuable. Otherwise, it's just noise, and I don't want noise. I also don't want people to think about JVM and feel like, oh, there's another obligation. No, I want them to think about JVM and think, wow, this is just an incredible resource, and I just wish I was taking more advantage of it. Which is really, that's totally fine. No one will ever take full advantage of it. It's just impossible, right? My aim is to grow to a point where we have not so many people that it's overwhelming, but just enough people that, as you work your way through and meet new members, there's always like, oh, I didn't even know you were here. Or, oh, I've been, we're both here for year and a half and haven't really talked yet. Let's get to know each other. So there's always that newness, but also there's the stability. So the Google group, once a month we have these brain trust calls, and then separately we have a 90-minute rapid networking call. Break that down into 3 18-minute. That's just as part of my focus on helping members meet and get to know each other. You're not going to get to know somebody really well in a quick rapid networking call, but it's enough. You have 3-4 people in a room, go around. It's enough to get a sense of someone's energy, and then you move on to the next one. And then based on that, you decide, oh, these 3 people, we should have one-on-ones afterwards. We should talk and see. When you have almost 200 members, if you talk to 2 a week, that could take you 2 years to get through to everybody, right? So we try to accelerate that. Let's see. Then of course, people have one-on-ones. We also have a method for speed dating. Any member can schedule their own speed dating course, session, and invite whoever they want. And then we also have a Telegram group. So we have a member directory that people can go there and find out who's there and learn about what they do and reach out if it's a fit. Always making improvements to that. So, those are the main things that how we interact. And yeah, I think I answered that question.
Am I right that there either used to be or there still are what you call the weak ties?
Yeah. So that's I'm great at naming other people's things, but the weak tie explosion call, that's our speed dating process. It's essentially based on research where it says that it's the weak ties in your network are often the most valuable. So that's the concept, and just make it easy for people to they can book a call, invite 5 or 6 slots, invite anyone to join or specific people, so that you spend an hour, go around, everyone gets 10 minutes, get to know each other, and based on that, also once they get to know each other a little bit, then again you uncover opportunities. I also encourage people to talk, more than once. I make introductions all the time, and then I have it set up in Gmail to snooze and pop back up a few weeks later. I check to say, hey guys, did you ever talk? And sometimes, yeah, it was good. And then sometimes, oh yeah, it never happened. So people appreciate that. And just the other day, someone had said, yeah, we talked, it was good. It was a good introduction. I said, anything come of it? Well, no, not yet. I said, well, I think the 2 of you should talk several times over the next 6 months. Because as you get to know each other and you're on each other's minds, it'll opportunities will come up. And, but if you just talk once and then don't talk again, it's unlikely. Quality here matters, so I'm curating a community, but then it really behooves members to end up with what I think of as like, your profitable relationships pods, your PR pod, right? You want to end up with your PR pod of, 10, 15 people at first, but you may end up talking to the 30 people to get those 10, the 10 who are really a good fit for you and each of the other ones as an individual, that you can support each other over the course of the year, multiple times in multiple ways, perhaps. And then over time, you want to grow that from 10 to 15 to 20, 25. You have 25 solid relationships, that's going to your business is going to do really, really well. 25 solid relationships with people who are marketing and selling to similar audiences, have a deep understanding of what you do and you what they do, and you're looking out for each other, thinking about each other. I mean, it's just remarkable what can be done. So I'm encouraging people to go deeper with their PR pod, forming it rather than just like talking to everybody once. And he replied to me like, yeah, you're right. And this is a guy running a nice sized business, multi-million-dollar business, and he's got dozens of employees. And I was like, yeah, you're right, and growing, because we all need reminders of the basics, and that's why our coaching groups are called Simplicity 6, Simplicity 7, and yeah, I can just keep rambling. So back to you.
Well, another thing that I know happens spontaneously, but obviously facilitated through the emails and the Google group, meetups, right? Mm-hmm. People say, hey, I'm in New York City. Who else is in New York City? And 7, 8, 9 JVMM members come hang out at someone's place, go have lunch together. Hey, yeah. I'm going to Social Media Marketing World. Who else is going to the conference? I'll see you in San Diego. And they have a meetup around a conference or a big industry event. Talk a little bit about how that in-person, because I know that's important to you, obviously, is to, FaceTime and actually being in 3D space, especially now post-pandemic. Mm-hmm. Talk about getting together in person.
I think it's great to get together in person. It's not easy for me because I'm far from most people, although we every now and then someone comes to my neck of the woods. But and I or visit New York or wherever. But meeting in person really adds a lot. I mean, there's just no question about it. And I love getting pictures when people send pictures of 4, 5, 6 people that got together at this or that event, or we have a part of the member directory. People can enter what events they're going to in the coming months, so people can see who else is going and make sure to meet in person. But yeah, absolutely, meeting in person is it's a whole other level. Although fortunately, there's so much that we could do. I mean, you and I have not yet met in person. I know last time I was in New York, you couldn't make it, unfortunately. But I mean, Philly. I thought that getting up at like 4 a.m. and driving to New York for a meetup would be worthwhile for you, but you apparently felt otherwise. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, we've had some great sessions, great conversations, met some great people.
Well, I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is there's a lot of these kind of JV, roundup type of things. This is a completely different experience because there's a level of authentic affection. I mean, people really develop serious personal friendships that come out of initially a business relationship. And as you said, the PR pods, the profitable relationship pods, that people become friends and they have new friends and new colleagues. And it really is, there's a big social component on top of the business component.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think,
and it applies for good and the bad. We've, like, when you have and that's this many people in something, and people are going to go through ups and downs, personal issues and so on. And we look for ways to be supportive of members when they need it, personally as well. I know members have gone through hardships and well, I mean, there's various ways that we've been able to be helpful, sometimes more, sometimes less, but we just, I see it first as, relationships first. We have 3 core values in JVMM. First one is relationships first. And it's really true. It's relationships first. It's not about coming in like, hey, who wants to promote me? That doesn't really work. it's not what is going to bring people around. But when people get to know you, people understand what your dreams are, your aspirations, your, where you are in your journey, and they see that you're interested in them and they're interested in you, and you look for ways to collaborate. That's worth a lot, and then the second value, we'll just go through them all, is creatively expand the pie. Once you bring good people together and they get to know each other, they look for ways to creatively expand the pie. How do we take what we're doing and expand it so we're reaching and serving more people, and that's a win for everybody, win. And that could be anything from just a simple cross promotion or one-way promotion where someone might pay commissions, or someone might contribute. There are different ways to support and to reciprocate to each other. It's not just I like and encourage more, perhaps more sophisticated ideas when it makes sense. Sometimes people will, we've had people become business partners, like actual business partners. They met in JVMM, so I would say, it's funny because one had actually heard of the other, right? And give him a shout out. Jeff Prager, who is a wonderful guy. He's done a lot and at a very high level CFO type work, as well as entrepreneurship. He's owned businesses. And then Adam Lean was younger, but also did great work. Adam had heard of Jeff and Jeff's work. And then when Adam ended up joining JVMM, at some point he was like, oh, Jeff Prager's here. And they got to know each other, and they ended up becoming business partners in the CFO, I forgot what they're called. CFOproject.com, I think it is. I think it's the CFO Project. Give them a shout out. So really good people. And the funny thing is, because we have a discount for business partners, when it came time to renew, they took advantage of that, and I was fine with it.
Right.
Because that's
two members become one partnership.
Exactly. What am I? That's exactly where that's the kind of situation where I feel like everybody wins, nobody loses.
Yeah.
There's no reason to make a fight out of that. Besides, they're CFOs and there are tax loopholes, so it's a loophole.
There you go. Exactly.
We all like a good loophole.
Deductible business expense, etc. I want to go back to something that you said very casually in passing, but I think is enormously important, which is you do not convince, you do not persuade, you do not chase. Obviously, having the expertise that you have with elegant sales conversations, you're a master at this. But for people listening, talk about that no convincing, no persuading, no chasing. Talk about that come from and the energy of invitation and application more so than chasing and convincing.
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, as a coach and consultant over the years, this was something I had to learn. One of the things that you learn is that you have these gurus online who say, like, you got to close a deal, or I don't even remember all the nonsense I've heard over the years, and tried to mimic in some cases, until I realized, like, that's like, I don't care if it works. It's not me. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be like that. I'm not looking to make sales at all costs. You end up with the worst clients, and nobody really wins. And you can't be needy. Nobody wants to buy from someone who's needy. And if you are needy, that's your own perception. Even if you're like, have nothing to, no money in the bank, you still have to mentally get to a place where you do not need that next sale, to where you believe it. And you just have to believe that my needs will be taken care of somehow, some way. My role is to do my best job here today and serving these people. Now, having said that, there are, of course, methods to leading, and what I call elegantly leading a sales conversation. And, and there's a skill set there, but it's not to try to get someone to buy something that they don't want to buy. I think of sales as leadership, right? Sales is leadership. It's saying, hey, you're at point A based on what you told me. You want to get to point B. Am I, is that accurate? And yes, you just said it better than I could have. Well, based on that, I think I can help you get from point A to point B. Here's what it might look like. Here's what I'd suggest we do. What do you think? Do you have any questions? Does any of this appeal to you? Some of it not appeal to you? And it's a conversation. It's not me pitching something to you and then it's take it or leave it. So, now that was just my journey in sales, both the mindset as well as the skill set. And then when it comes to JVM, there's that additional point of, I can't kill the goose who lays the golden egg, and that's the community. That's the interaction. That's the network. You start bringing people in who aren't a fit, who don't belong there, even if on paper they qualify, but they don't have their heart in it. After a while, it just changes the whole dynamic. And for what? I don't charge enough. If I was charging $25,000, right, it would be harder to turn people away. But I don't charge enough to allow any one member to come in and drag down the atmosphere, so to speak. It's just the feeling that people have. So that's how it is. And the fact is that over time there'll be attrition. People will leave for whatever reasons. Sometimes it's just, hey, they're in a different place, or sometimes, okay, I need something different now. And I respect that. And I understand that. Every now and then someone may have not the best experience, So I try to learn from that. I take their feedback, try to see what we can do to improve. But, obviously there's a limit to what I can control. I really I facilitate, feedback and so on. But, all in all, though, I found that the less I try to control, the happier everybody is, the more successful they are, the more successful I am. And when you try to convince or push somebody into something that's not a good fit, I was just talking to somebody, one of our members for a number of years who's very successful. She's doing, she's coming out, about 1.7 million or so, right? Quite a number of people probably know her. I'm not going to say, but she expressed some interest in joining our Simplicity 7 group a number of months ago, and we had some back and forth in Facebook Messenger over time. And she's taking a vacation, and then was doing this launch or that, and never, she'd asked me to check back. I checked back, and I said, look, let's leave that aside. It's time for us to talk and catch up. It's been a while, and forget about whether if. But once we were talking, and this was yesterday, I think. Once we were talking, so I asked questions to understand, and I came to understand what her thinking was, what her situation is, and what was her hesitation, and because of that, so she knew that I was not trying to push her into anything. She knew that I understood her situation, and I said, look, based on that, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I see as a potential benefit or value, and we came up with a clear next step that may or may not lead to her joining, and that's fine. And I'm joining again. This is just it's an optional upgrade, right? I think she would be great, but I'm not in her shoes. She's quite capable and she's doing very well. She knows better than I do what she needs. I know what I have to offer, so I can describe it. I can answer questions. I can offer to lead, and now it's up to her. And I'm quite sure that sometime in the next coming months she'll be ready, and that's fine. But it doesn't do her any good or me any good if I would try to convince her to join something before she's ready. It's just, I don't know. And if anyone's feeling pressure from mentors or coaches to hard sell, if you're not comfortable with it, and some people are comfortable with it, and I'm not going to judge, as long as they're delivering on what they promise. If you're delivering on what they promise and they like to hard sell, then fine. We've all been on that journey. Some of us will buy and some of us won't. But if you're not comfortable with it, you do not have to sell that way. Do not have to hard sell. Sales is leadership. It is not pressuring. Learn to lead, to elegantly lead, if you like. And when people feel that you listen to them, that you genuinely understand where they are, where they're headed, and what the obstacles are to get from here to there, they naturally will turn to you and say, well, wow, what do you get me? You've just articulated my situation better than I could. What do you recommend? It's a natural like it's almost a reflex. You know, what do you recommend? And that's your opportunity to offer to lead. And then they may have questions. Here's some good languaging that some people might find helpful, because sometimes you find a potential client, like you had a good conversation, and then they say, I realized that I'm not ready for this. And then, and you start to wonder, like, what gave them that impression? I think they're totally ready for this. And I used to get stuck on that. So this might be helpful for somebody. And I simply ask now, is like, what is it that led you to that conclusion that, hey, I accept whatever you decide. Just for my own understanding, what led you to the conclusion that you're not ready for this? Was it something I said, or something completely, just on your side that I don't even know anything about? And that gives you information that if they got a misunderstanding, and that often happens, there's a misunderstanding as to, like, they see it and says, well, I'm not ready because XYZ. And you think, like, XYZ, it's totally irrelevant. I mean, we could work around that for sure. So that gives you that opportunity to uncover what is that XYZ. And so that little framing, the little question, I found to be really helpful. So you can just from my own understanding, what was it, something I said that gave you that impression, that led you to that conclusion you're not ready? Or was it something unrelated that I may not even know anything about? Or just help me understand, what was it, so I could learn.
Yeah, very powerful. So good. So good. Well, as we're wrapping up, I've got two final questions for you. The final question is going to be, how can people get in touch and stay in touch with more Dov Gordon brilliance? But even before we get to that, if folks were to take one overarching idea from the concept of joint ventures and tapping into your smart friends, your cool friends, what would you hope that overall takeaway around the concept of joint ventures would be?
Understand who your ultimate audience is. Understand who you're trying to reach, and find people who also have those people in their audience. It could be their client base. It could be they just have an online audience of one kind or another. Get to know each other and find ways of introducing each other to your audiences. And you could start small. I don't care if your audience is 10 people. I don't care if your audience is 10,000 or 100,000. You can find people who are at a comparable level and work with you. Don't overcomplicate. Simplicity. Don't overcomplicate this at all, because it's too easy to get stuck on, oh, before I do this, I have to do that and that and that. These days, if someone has a nice, has 100 people reading a LinkedIn post, and then they agree to interview you for their LinkedIn post, or share an article that you wrote with a link back to your page or something. These are joint ventures. All these are is helping each other to reach audiences they wouldn't reach otherwise. And don't overcomplicate it. Look for 10, 15, 20 people like this who can help you get in front of your ideal clients, more of the audience that you're looking to reach, and focus on giving first, not giving so that they give me back. That always comes through and rarely makes anybody happy, but genuinely serving. And also ask, like, don't wait for people to figure out what you need. Like, genuinely serve, but also let people know how they can help you. Hey, this is great. Hey, Dov, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Is there something I can do for you? Yes, actually there is. And here's what it is. Right. And many people will be happy to help. So keep it simple. This is something that can operate on the simplest level, like I've just described. It can operate on a much higher, much more sophisticated level, such as becoming actual business partners. Or developing, like, without business partners, but having, like, Jay Facet calls it upstream, downstream, where, anybody who buys from one person, it naturally leads that over a period of time, they'll be ready to buy from the other person. And having that kind of relationships, or multiple such relationships set up, is a little more advanced, but a great idea. So I definitely recommend that.
Totally spot on. Well, how can people get connected and stay connected to more Dov Gordon brilliance? Where can we send them? Where can they learn more about JVMM?
Profitablelationships.com is our website. And if people want to get my emails, I have a profitablelationships.com/the manual, I think is the link. That's a manual that I wrote many years ago, how to systematically and consistently attract first-rate clients. We sold it for 5 years. for $97. We give it away for free. That works. Yeah, profitablерelationships.com/the manual. And there's zero fluff in there, and it's excellent, if I may say so myself, and totally free. So that's if they want to stay in touch.
Yes. It is
Thank you.
excellent. And you totally may say so yourself, because it's 1,000% true. So all of those links will be directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Dove Gordon, thank you for being on with us. You are such a rock star. I admire you. What I didn't mention earlier is that we've been connected for at least 19, 20 years. I think 2002, 2003 is when we first got connected. And it's just been a joy to see your growth and your evolution as you described.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Long time. That means we're old.
Maybe that's why we don't have any hair.
That could be too. All right, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you, David.